Hello, everyone. I am Genevieve Wood, Senior Contributor for the Daily Signal. Welcome to our first inaugural Daily Signal Google Hangout. The Daily Signal, for those of you who don't know, it is a brand new multimedia news organization here at the Heritage Foundation. And folks say, well, what's different about the Daily Signal from everything else? Well, there's a number of things, but one of which is that we have the intellectual firepower of the Heritage Foundation behind us, because whereas the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal calls a lot of our experts to get comments and analysis on issues around the country, we actually work in the building with them. I mean, the folks you see at the bottom of the screen are actually down the hall from me or downstairs, so we have access to them and their research and thinking 24/7, which really gives us a platform that I would argue no other news organization has. So what we want to do with the Google Hangout is really introduce more of them to you, make this more interactive so that you can ask them questions. Today we're going to introduce you to three experts in this area, but over the course of time, this is something we're going to do every couple of weeks. So our next one will be on June 19th, and we want to hear feedback from you on how we can do it better, but we want to find out ways that we can just communicate better with you on all the issues that are important, what's happening to you, whether it's taxes, whether it's healthcare, education, regulations, foreign policy. There is somebody in the Heritage Foundation building that's an expert on that topic. So we want to make sure you have access to that expertise as well. So the three folks joining us today, first is Lindsay Burke, and I'm going to ask each of them, by the way, to introduce themselves. So Lindsay, let me bring you up first and tell everybody what you do here at Heritage.
Great, thanks Genevieve. I'm the Will Skillman Fellow in Education Policy here at Heritage, and our education policy work really runs the gamut of ed policy. So we look at everything from pre-K education through K-12 and higher ed. We look at federal policy, state level policies like school choice, and some of the really hot button issues like Common Core. So it really does run the gamut of policy.
Well, we're going to come back to you in a second and talk more on Common Core, because I know that's something a lot of people are outraged about, but also confused about. Up next is Diane Katz. Hi, Diane.
Hi, Genevieve. Good to see you. I am a regulatory fellow, and I study and research the number and cost of federal regulations and their effect on the economy as well as on consumers. And I also do a number of things relating to Dodd-Frank and the horrendous regulatory burden that represents. And I'm currently working on the Import-Export Bank.
And we're going to talk more about that. Diane is one of those folks that I always say if I had her job, I would jump out the window, because I know many of you know there's a lot of regulations out there, but you actually have no idea the stuff the government is doing and trying to regulate, and Diane tracks it along with James Gattuso and others every single day here. Up next, we have Hans von Spakovsky. Hi, Hans.
Hi, Genevieve.
So tell us about your expertise area and also about a new book you have coming out.
Sure. I'm a senior legal fellow in the Edwin Meese Center for Legal and Judicial Studies. We're the lawyers at the Heritage Foundation. I work on everything from campaign finance, voting and elections, to other issues involving the First Amendment, and also the Department of Justice. And I, in fact, have a book coming out next week with John Fund. We've written a book before about voter fraud and election integrity, but our latest book is called Obama's Enforcer, the Eric Holder Justice Department. And it's all about how Eric Holder has run the Justice Department over the past 6 years.
Well, I know it's going to be a blockbuster book, as your previous one was, and we want to make sure people know how to get that. I'm assuming they can order it now on Amazon already?
They can on Amazon or Barnes & Noble. They can get it.
Okay, great. Well, we're going to come back to you and talk about that, but also this whole debate over those who would like to limit free speech. We're having that debate up in the Senate, has been going on this week. But let me come back to Lindsay. Lindsay, a lot of places school is out or is about to be out, but the whole debate over education and especially the topic of Common Core is really heating up. Kind of tell us where we are. I think last count I saw 16 to 20 states are either pushing back or saying we're not going to implement it. Where are we right now?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And those 17 or so states continue to push back. What has been really wonderful to see is the progress made over the past 3 or so months. We've had 2 states, one just yesterday, totally pull out of Common Core. They've completely exited. South Carolina exited yesterday, so Governor Nikki Haley signed a bill into law that will ultimately pull South Carolina out of Common Core. Prior to that, Indiana did the same thing. So we're seeing some major momentum in the states, and these states are hearing from parents, they're hearing from teachers. Parents are seeing their kids come home with math homework that they don't recognize, and for the parents' part, they don't know where to turn now. And this is part of the reason we saw Indiana pull out. You had parents who were concerned about what they were seeing. They go to their local school. In the case of one Indiana mom, it was her daughter's local Catholic school, so a private school.
Wow.
She asked the principal, hey, what's going on? I don't like what I see. And he said, effectively, sorry, my hands are tied, it's Common Core. And I think that's what a lot of parents are feeling right now. This particular mother, Heather Crossan, said at that point she realized that not only had her daughter's curriculum left the local Catholic school, but it had left the state. So parents are asking, who do they turn to? Do they go and knock on the door at the Federal Department of Education now? So I think it's been a lot of this pushback from parents. Teachers aren't liking what they're seeing either, don't know a lot about it, don't feel prepared to teach it. So we're hearing pushback from them as well. So starting to see a few states, but lots of good momentum.
Lindsay, let me ask you, though, I mean, as many people who are watching I know have seen this, you have folks like former Governor Jeb Bush.
Right.
There's other conservatives out there who've said, well, hey, Common Core is a good thing. It's giving standards across the board. Don't we want all of our kids to meet these standards? I mean, how do you answer that, and what is really at the core of why Common Core is such a bad thing for students?
Well, I think anyone who has worked with children know how different children are, one child to the next, let alone kids state to state, school to school. So I think this whole notion that we can effectively standardize the content that's taught and that somehow will improve outcomes. We have seen 50 years of growing centralization and standardization in education, and we have nothing to show for it in terms of academic progress or progress in narrowing achievement gaps, improving graduation rates in any substantial way. And so I think we're at a point now where we really have two paths before us. We can either go down this road of further standardization and centralization, or we can embrace what we're seeing in the states, this wonderful and robust proliferation of school choice. And I think if we ever hope to really see outcomes improve, it's going to come through choice and student-centered policies and policies that empower parents to choose learning options that are as unique as their children are. And, just as an aside, I think Common Core is a real threat to the wonderful progress we've seen on school choice. It is having a terribly homogenizing impact on our education system.
Yeah. Well, that's one reason I'm surprised about Governor Jeb Bush, because Florida has been a state that really tried a lot of school choice and saw progress across groups, across ethnic groups. I mean, really lifted up a lot of folks who had not been doing well. So it's surprising he's embraced this. Listen, there's a lot. You can find all of Lindsay's work and her whole team, both their in-depth work on heritage.org and then their analysis and commentary and quick debriefs on the Daily Signal. And if you go to thedailysignal.com, you will see at the top that Common Core is one of the issues we're following very closely, and you can read all about the latest that's happening there. Let's go over to Diane. Diane, another hot topic that we have been following, and I don't know how many people around the country have closely been following this because it's not a sexy topic to the news media, is this whole battle over the Export-Import Bank. And this is a chance for a real conservative victory this year if people go the right way. First of all, tell us what the bank is and then why it's such a problem.
Okay, this has the potential, I think, to being a really big win for taxpayers, because what the Export-Import Bank does is provides financing, subsidized financing, to select companies, and that allows their exports to be purchased by companies overseas. The issue right now is that the charter of the bank expires on September 30th. This is a government bank, and so Congress would have to renew it. Congress shouldn't renew it, I don't think, and many others also agree, because the bank's not needed. It puts taxpayers' money at risk, and frankly, the bank is mismanaged.
So similar to the way that the government got into the home loan business with Fannie and Freddie and the like, they want to be in this business, and as you said, what happens is they give loans to basically to foreign companies, is that right? Who can then purchase goods from U.S. companies, and if those loans are going to be really strong, then why wouldn't private banks give those loans in the first place? Why do we need the government to do it?
Well, that's a good question, and the companies that are really driving this are major corporations, multinational corporations such as Ford Motor Company, John Deere, Caterpillar, Westinghouse, GE, and the biggest of all, Boeing. And it's, it's right for taxpayers to wonder why these companies can't self-finance their customers or help them get private financing. But the fact is the government offers this cheap money. And of course they're going to take it. Who wouldn't want to take it? So it's really not, I don't really blame the companies, but we should not have it there for them to take advantage of.
Well, and as we know that it can end up, people talk about, well, this helps American companies because then foreign companies can buy from them. But you have some other American companies like Delta Airlines who says, wait a minute, if you loan money to Air China to buy Boeing airplanes at a better deal than we can buy planes from Boeing, how's that helping Delta Airlines?
That's exactly right. That domestic companies are put at a disadvantage in a number of ways because of the financing, the taxpayer subsidized financing that's going to companies overseas. And worse is that we really don't know how healthy the taxpayer investment is because, as the Inspector General and the Government Accountability Office have reported, the bank is very mismanaged. Its books are inaccurate, and we don't have a good accounting of the risk.
So we've got a lot of information on the Daily Signal and heritage.org about the whole XM banks. If you want to kind of just learn more about it, Diane's got some great stuff up there. We've even got a 90-second video that kind of tells you here's how it works, something that's kind of fun to share with other folks. They can get a quick snapshot of it. But just quickly, Diane, tell us about a recent story you did on Miss Jenny's Pickles.
Oh, yes. This is
one of these companies that's benefited, right?
What we have found out is that the company, which the XM Bank officials hold up as the gold standard of their program, the history of it is a little bit different than what the bank is promoting. The bank and their officials promote Miss Jenny's Pickles as if the bank is the one that has made them an international sensation. But the fact is that the company was exporting long before XM even got involved. So it raises the question of why are they using a false narrative to sell the bank to lawmakers and the public? And what that tells me is that maybe they don't have a good enough true story to tell, and so they're kind of fudging it a little bit. Yeah, but there's a lot of details, and some of it is arcane. What I would tell the audience, however, is that this really boils down to whether or not the government ought to be giving taxpayer money to big corporations, what we commonly call cronyism, or whether, and that has all sorts of bad effects, or whether the government should just be out of that.
Yeah, I mean, getting out of the kind of picking the winners and looters type of business. Well, like I said, there's a lot of good stuff on both the Daily Signal and heritage.org related to this topic. I interviewed Congressman Jeb Hensarling of Texas, who oversees one of the committees that really is tracking this issue, and he gave a really good interview, and then actually a speech here at Heritage on this very, very topic. Hans, I want to make sure that we get over to your set because we're going to have Senator Jim DeMint join us here in a few minutes. But I want to talk first, before we get more into your book, this whole idea that's been happening in the Senate this week. You had a Democratic senator introduce an amendment that would amend the U.S. Constitution, if I understand it correctly, to limit what they would call political speech. And they say that doesn't limit free speech, just political speech. How does this work?
Yeah, it was Tom Udall of New Mexico, and to the everlasting shame of the United States Senate, there are 41 co-sponsors of an amendment to basically cull back the First Amendment. This would be the first time in U.S. history that we have pulled back rights protected by the Bill of Rights. And what this amendment would do is give Congress plenary power, basically full authority to do whatever they want with regard to the spending and raising of money and what they call in-kind equivalents with regard to federal elections. And while most people think that means, well, that means they can control how much money you can contribute to a candidate, no, it also means that if they want to limit how much an ordinary, everyday American wants to spend on independent political speech, they can do it. So, for example, if they said, well, you can't spend more than $500 on political speech that opposes or supports a candidate, that would mean that if I wanted to take out a newspaper ad, my local newspaper, to tell people that a particular person running for Congress I thought was not very good and they shouldn't vote for him. If I spent more than $500, I could be prosecuted by the Justice Department and potentially go to jail because Congress would have full authority to do that and do other things like ban political books.
Okay, this seems crazy. I mean, this is something that even Ted Kennedy was against back in his days in the Senate. I mean, if Ted Kennedy's against it, how could Chuck Schumer and all these guys be for it? I mean, is this because Harry Reid is so obsessed with the Koch brothers? I mean, why are they doing this right now?
Yeah, he is obsessed with the Koch brothers, and they actually had a hearing on Tuesday of this week over in the Hart Senate Office Building. That's the biggest hearing room they have. And Senator Reid actually came in and testified about this. And he clearly was very upset over the fact that when he runs for election, there are folks out there criticizing him and criticizing his policies, and he doesn't like that. And that is one of the reasons they apparently are pushing this. I have to tell you, I don't say this very often, but I actually think it's shameful that almost half of the United States Senate is pushing something that would cut back on First Amendment rights.
It really is amazing. Do we have a place, Hans, have you written anywhere that has a link to who those 41 senators are who've signed on?
Well, we did write a paper on Monday. It's about 5 pages. It goes through all the public policy reasons why this is bad. You can link to the resolution over at the government website, thomas.gov, and you can find out who all the co-sponsors are. But it's basically most of the Democrats who are in the United States Senate. Not a single Republican has actually signed on to the law.
Well, it is a threat. The good news is I don't think anybody thinks it's actually going to go anywhere this time around, but just the fact that, as you said, that many folks would sign on to something like this ought to tell people where either that party or liberals in general really want to head. Speaking of liberals, let's talk just briefly about Eric Holder. Tell us, your book I know chronicles a lot of things, but what is the kind of maybe give us maybe 2 of the stories that that you think people should know about.
Well, for example, we've got a chapter on national security, and what's interesting about that is that this Attorney General has opened up and prosecuted more leak investigations of classified information than any prior Attorney General combined. But when you look at his investigations, they are very willing to go after low-level leakers. But in leaks that we know came from White House officials, from the very top of the administration, those leaks have been studiously ignored by the Justice Department. And those were all leaks, for example, prior to the 2012 election that were clearly guaranteed and ensured making the president, look good, look like he was tough on terrorism. Those leaks they ignore, going after low-level folks, that they do.
Well, Hans, thank you very much. And the book, again, is called Obama's Enforcer. And if you want to get a copy of it, you can go to Amazon right now, pre-order your copy. And I know Hans will be out there on the airwaves a lot next week promoting it along with John Fahn.
That's right.
Well, I want to thank Lindsay Burke and Diane Katz and Hans von Spakovsky for joining us. We have now our president, Jim DeMint, joining us, and I'm going to have all the policy experts leave and then see if Senator DeMint can answer the questions that we've gotten from people on Twitter and email all by himself. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Hello, Senator DeMint. How are you? I think we maybe have Senator DeMint's mute button on because I'm not able to actually hear you through the... Oh, I think maybe we found it. Is that it?
Okay, can you hear me now?
Oh, I hear you great now. Perfect. Thank you for being with us. We appreciate it.
Okay, glad
Well,
to
you probably heard me say I let all the policy folks go, so you're going to have to be on your own to answer these questions that we've got. First of all, Senator DeMint, you travel all over the country and you talk with heritage members, but you also talk just to a lot of different folks out there. What are you hearing from people in terms of what issues are most pressing to them right now and they're most concerned about?
Well, it does come back to jobs and just economic security. People want to know that there's opportunity and hope for a brighter future for themselves and their families. So they're very concerned about every report that says the economy is not growing as well. And a lot of the things that heritage produces, such as the cost of regulation, what that does to jobs, the cost of how negative our tax code is and the effects that it has on our economy. So people are, I think, very sensitive to what is going to happen to them in the future as far as their jobs and economic security.
Well, we talked a little bit about that with Diane and others. I mean, the Export-Import Bank, and obviously what that does, and just cronyism in general, how that hurts the overall economy. But I want to make sure we get into some questions, because a lot of folks send us questions via Twitter and email, and we're going to go into some of those. Yeah. So the first one actually kind of deals a little bit with what Hans was just talking about, and it's from Bill. His question was, are you concerned about the Supreme Court of the United States allowing unlimited campaign contributions? And this obviously kind of falls out of the whole debate we've seen up on the Senate this week.
Yeah. Well, a lot of money in the political process worries us all, and it's something we've got to think about. But even more worrisome is to have a group of people, particularly a group of politicians, deciding who gets to play in the political process and who can give and who can't give. So despite its weaknesses and concerns, the best place for us to be in politics is for there to be good transparency, but to not try to have the funds limited. The best way, I think, to reassure people is for Washington to stop controlling so many areas of our lives and our economy. That's why these big companies, these folks with a lot of money want to throw a lot of money into politics, because they're trying to buy influence and they're trying to buy loopholes in the tax code. So if we want to limit the money in politics, let's limit the power of the politicians, and that's the best way to do it. I don't want Harry Reid deciding who can give money to political candidates.
I don't think many folks do. Let's get another question in here. This was about a current news item that's very hot. This is from Jane, and Jane writes in, why was Army Private Bo Bergdahl promoted to sergeant during his captivity?
Well, that's a normal process in the military. If someone's in captivity, they get their normal pay raises, their normal promotions. Certainly now that whole process needs to be reviewed. There are a lot of questions about what really happened, and these are questions that should be answered. We have grave concerns here at Heritage, as you know, Genevieve, of this whole process of actually negotiating with terrorists, trading with terrorists, letting 5 of their top terrorist leaders free in exchange for this prisoner. We're all happy that this prisoner is home. There were circumstances about his capture. We're going to have to work through that. But we always should celebrate any time an American can get home. But the trade that we did, I think, has a lot of question marks, and it's something we're seriously concerned about.
Well, Senator DeMint, you obviously know a lot of folks up on the Hill, a lot of your former colleagues, and I mean, you've seen Dianne Feinstein come out. This has not just been Republicans coming out and questioning the administration on this. Do you think this is something that's going to kind of, it's something they're really going to pursue?
Well, it's part of a pattern by the administration of going around Congress on many things, and the law is explicit here, but perhaps technically the administration thinks they've got a way around this. But this is a major deal. We've got terrorist combatants in custody that are let go, and without the consultation, even of people in his own party, high-ranking senior people in Congress. So I'm sure this is going to be not only a concern for this one event, but this is part of a pattern the administration has shown to disregard the law and disregard the normal processes that we have in a divided government.
Well, sticking with the foreign policy thing here for a moment, or in that direction, we have another question. This came into us via email from Arenia, and she writes in, given the unstable situation in international relations, it is often said that the U.S. should be a leader in the world. But what does it mean for the U.S. to be a leader, and how can it lead? And you just got back from Asia, so you've been experiencing some of that.
I've got a good answer because I've in the last year being at Heritage, we spent a lot of time in the UK and on the Europe side. I've just spent 3 weeks in Asia. Everywhere we go, and all the foreign officials who come through Heritage, and as you know, Genevieve, a lot of them come through almost every week, and they're much more honest with us than they were with me and with the State Department. I think we're much more trusted. But they all tell us that unless America leads, unless America is perceived as being strong and committed to our allies, then the world becomes much less stable. That's what I heard in Asia, that the president came a week or so before I got there. He made the promises to keep his commitments. But once we got there, they were just asking, can he keep the commitment with his cuts in the military? And will he, after he's demonstrated drawing red lines in Syria and not following through? So whenever there are questions about America's strength and our commitment, the world becomes less stable. And we see that around China. We see it in the Ukraine. So it's something I hope the next election can begin to deal with.
Let's try to get one more in. This is a question we got in from Mark via Twitter, and this is on a topic that I know a lot of folks are concerned about. When can we expect an organized attack on the gross misrepresentations of facts by the pro-amnesty crowd?
Well, Genevieve, as you know, Heritage has been probably the lead player in helping Americans understand the cost and the dangers of amnesty. We know that the amnesty will make the whole immigration system work. We also know that our immigration system needs to be reformed. There are certainly border security. There are many cases where we need to bring people into our country to support the economy that we can't because of a broken immigration system. But all these needed reforms should not be held hostage to this blanket amnesty that is going to cost Americans so much money and so much opportunity in the future. We're going to continue to let Americans know that this is a bad deal and it should not be part of immigration reform.
Well, and as many people know, if they've been following our writings on the Daily Signal and on heritage.org, it's really dangerous also for the people that are trying to come here. I mean, the fact that they think they're going to get amnesty because that's what they hear coming out of the White House and other politicians talking, you know, you've now got children coming across the border without their parents because they think if they can just get them here, they're all going to be legalized one day. And that is, talk about inhumane. That is promoting something that is harming people.
But it's a picture of what happens when there's amnesty or a promise of amnesty. It just encourages more illegal immigration. It doesn't work. We can't fall for this again. It was the one mistake Reagan said that he made. We know that from our own Ed Meese here of offering amnesty in return for real immigration reform. He never got the reforms that he wanted or the border security. So we can't make that mistake again. And again, I hope this next election will bring people to Washington who are going to act in the best interest of Americans first. That's a big part of immigration. We need an immigration program that serves the American people.
Well, Senator DeMint, we had other questions and the like that we couldn't get to, but I hope that you will join us on another Hangout sometime and answer some more.
I love to hang out with you and all the folks who follow you. So thanks, Genevieve.
Thank you very much. And of course, folks, you can follow at Senator Jim DeMint. We've got his Twitter handle up there. You can read all of his work as well. I mean, he doesn't just talk, he's also a great writer. You can find out actually a lot about his most recent Asia trip. We had a story by him up on the Daily Signal, so I encourage you to check it out there. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Genevieve.
Well, everybody, thank you for joining us. At the Daily Signal, we believe that one of the greatest defenses of liberty is an informed citizenry. And that is what we're trying to do both at Heritage and through the work on the Daily Signal, is making sure that you have the tools, the information you need to stay informed, to make the difference in elections that Senator DeMint just talked about. So encourage you to follow us every day. Go to thedailysignal.com to keep up with the news and what's happening in Washington, around the country. But stay engaged with us. Please email me, or I should say follow me on Twitter is even better. Send me your comments, your emails, and I hope you'll join us again on June 19th when we do this Hangout again. Thanks, everybody.